I was a crappy customer to our crappy customer. I used to work a customer service job at a dispensary. We had this one customer who was just a cranky, miserable woman. She'd come in acting all sweet, say hi to us all, ask for her product, and then the show would begin. Here's an example of how these transactions typically went. This isn't what I ordered. Go get what I ordered. Employee-ma'am, you specifically requested this eighth. You said you wanted 3.5 grams of Brownie Scout? No, I said I wanted the pineapple gummies. Go get them now. We would go get the thing she said she wanted. She'd complain about lazy employees, be all smiles again, and then she would pay and leave. And be right back in the store a half hour later with any excuse she could think of. The package was opened when she got it. The edibles melted together. There was a hair in her jar. The packaging smelled like chlorine. Any stupid excuse she could pull from her ass looking for a refund or store credit, she would try and use it. Every single time she came in, this is how it went. But then one day, I went to a gas station to fill up my car while I was in the next town over, and wouldn't you be damned, she was a cashier at the gas station. So I, of course, asked for a pack of Marlboro 100 seconds. She grabbed the pack and I said, "That's not what I asked for. I asked for the Camels." She grabbed the Camels. That's not what I wanted. I wanted the Newports." She sighed and grabbed the Newports. "What are you doing?" "I'm just in here to pay for my gas." The long stare she gave me was almost enough to make me regret starting crap, but she knew as an employee she could get in real trouble if she snapped. So she forced a smile, put my cash in the register, and I went on my merry way. But I wasn't done. I came right back in 5 minutes later. I looked at her and said, "Excuse me, I only spent X amount on gas, but you took all of my money. Where's my change?" She is obviously super pissed off at this point, but what was she gonna do about it? That's freaking right. Absolutely nothing. So she tries very hard, and fails, to politely explain to me that the gas cost the amount I had given her, and she couldn't give me the difference. So, in a voice that almost sounded exactly like hers, I complained about lazy employees, smiled sweetly, said goodbye, and walked out. Just like she does. She didn't learn her lesson for a while, came back in a few times with her same old routine. Then I recruited a coworker, and we both went back to that gas station separately a few times and did our new routine. After trying and failing to file a complaint, she stopped coming in entirely and balance was finally restored. I don't work at the dispensary anymore, but traumatizing her the way she did my coworkers, and I still makes me smile years later, lol. Steal furniture? Almost lose your job. So my dad owns a house that he's been renting for some time now. The tenants that lived there were, for the most part, decent people who my dad thought were trustworthy. That all changed about 2 months into the tenancy when the tenant refused to pay the month's rent. My dad showed some leniency and gave them another month to pay up what was owed. They didn't pay a thing. By this point, my dad, frustrated by the whole situation and being 2 months out of rent money, offered them a deal. Leave the house as soon as possible and then only pay half the money owed. They countered with a different agreement. They would leave the house in a clean state with all of their furniture left behind as compensation. My dad, wanting to just be done with them, agreed. Q2 when my dad gets to the house, finding the place in a mess, with none of the furniture left behind, including the furniture that belonged to my dad in the first place. The 2 sofas that my dad owned were left behind, but they were trashed and left in the shed. When my dad confronted them asking for them to pay up the full amount that the furniture was worth, he was met with a promise of payment after 2 weeks, which he didn't believe, and when he requested they pay earlier, he was met with "good luck getting your money," followed by laughing emojis. This made my dad angry, and he decided that he wasn't going to let this slide. My dad knew that the tenant was a Christian pastor of a church, and his son also had some job related to the church. My dad contacted the church and explained everything from how they hadn't paid him rent money to stealing the furniture and trashing the place. The church was somewhat interested about this behavior. The next day, my dad gets an angry phone call from the tenant's son cursing at him and asking him what he thought he was doing, contacting the church saying he was being unfair. My dad hung up on him only for him to attempt to ring 10 times after he hung up. From what we could piece together, the church had told the pastor that if he didn't settle things with my dad, him and his son would lose their jobs. My dad received the full amount for the furniture that same day and agreed to back off. My dad later said, "It was never about the money but the way this guy treated him and his values." My dad, being a Christian himself, was disappointed. Threaten my friend with revenge porn? I'll ruin your whole damn life. My very good friend made some slightly dumb mistakes and sent some pictures to someone that she reasonably thought she could trust, but not knowing much more than his first name, his screen name, and roughly where he lived and the type of work he did. He is not in our country, but had indicated that he would be traveling for work to near us shortly, and they had made some plans to meet. And when she got some red flags and backed out, the dude threatened to publish these pictures online. I am, incidentally, an attorney. So, some searching later, and gathering up any pictures he sent her of him that could possibly identify him, his online handle led me to a TikTok page, which led me to an Instagram page with his name on it. That led to a LinkedIn page with his place of work that matched a picture he sent with a branded polo he was wearing. Some more search got me the email of the CEO, VP of HR, Operations Manager, and Public Relations Manager. I just fired off an email on behalf of my client of the screenshots of him threatening revenge porn, snippets of the conversation showing that username while he sent that exact picture of him wearing his company's branded apparel, links to how I know it's him, along with pictures he sent her of his motorcycle with the license plate showing, as further proof it is him. I also included screenshots of him discussing a workplace incident that were time-stamped, along with pieces of dialogue discussing how he had sex with an ex at his place of work and discussing plans to have sex with her in his office as well. I also included a picture he sent her showing his work laptop with his entire Outlook calendar, along with proprietary information, which he sent to prove he was busy, along with other pictures he took of his workplace with non-consenting employees. I further informed his employer that I will be forwarding all this information to them, law enforcement, and since he had indicated that he would be traveling to the United States soon, we'll also forward this to the local office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation as, since my client is a U.S. citizen on U.S. soil, these threats constituted a federal crime. So that should they continue with his employment and continue with their plans to send him to the United States for work, I will ensure, on behalf of my client, that federal law enforcement is waiting for him on arrival, which I will do, as one of the assistant U.S. attorneys for this region is a law school buddy of mine. Since I have his license plate #I know where he lives, and will be contacting his local authorities tomorrow. You dumb motherfucker, thinking you were hiding around anonymity, thinking you could threaten my friend? It took me 45 minutes to destroy your life. Not going to pay overtime? Think again. TLDR, don't mess with the IT guy. I was discussing this sub with a good friend, and he said, "Boy, have I got a story that LL fit." It wasn't his story, but his brother's, and I sat with him and got the details. Buckle up, it's a good one and a long one. Let's call him Bob. Bob has been fiddling with computers since he was a kid, and knows them pretty well. As with most IT people, he's moved from job to job. The employer he worked for was a service/distribution company, and there were 2 IT employees. The company was located in Ontario, Canada. About 3 years ago, Bob's employer decided to modernize their software. They had separate programs for dispatching, for inventory, for payroll and finances, and it was complicated moving information from one program to the other. They decided to get an ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning, program, and Bob recommended one that he knew inside out from a previous employer. For those of you who don't know, an ERP program handles everything: purchase orders, sales, inventory, personnel, vendors, customers, all of it. You can run a report and find out which customer has bought the most part ABC in the last year, which salesman has improved his numbers the most, which vendor has the fastest delivery time, which shipper packed the most orders. Everyone in the company used the ERP program, but it was very complicated, and they used the aspects of it that related to their position. For example, the receiver would accept a shipment, verify the quantity, confirm it was received, and the inventory stats would be available to the salespeople if they wanted to look up how many were on hand. The receiver didn't care what the price was or who the vendor was, he just did his job. Bob was run ragged during the implementation process, but he managed to train most of the employees on their aspects, and after a few months, everything was running fairly smoothly. Bob still got tickets for tweaks in the operation of the software and occasional hardware IT issues. Then the company decided to expand their footprint and was marketing into different time zones. That messed things up. Atlanta, Canada is 90 minutes early, so if someone sent an email or an order at 8 a.m. their time, it would arrive at 6:30 a.m. Ontario time. Pacific Canada is 3 hours late, so an email sent at 3 p.m. Vancouver time would arrive at 6 p.m. This stretched out the day. So many staff came in early and worked late. Bob would arrive at 8 a.m. and there would be people that demanded his immediate assistance and were annoyed that he didn't respond instantly, even though their request was submitted before his start time. Same with late in the day, his phone would ring at dinner time with people that wanted help right now. They decided to stagger his and his IT colleagues' shift times. Bob would start at 6 a.m. and work till 2:30, and his colleague would start at 10:30 a.m. and work till 7 p.m. Bob's colleague had kids and refused the shift change. The employer insisted. The colleague quit. That meant that Bob was the only person in the IT department. The employer said they would look to hire a new IT guy, but they had trouble finding one that knew the ERP system, and they were offering well under a market value salary. Bob asked for a raise and was denied. Then he wanted overtime, and the employer told him that as an IT specialist, he was exempt from overtime laws in Ontario. Bob looked it up, and the employer was correct. This went on for some time, and he knew lots of IT people socially. They told him what the company was offering, and Bob knew that they wouldn't find another tech. Things went downhill from there. Bob would get chewed out if he missed a call or an email, no matter what time it came in. He had to train new hires in the ERP system, as well as take care of the hardware. He asked repeatedly for better compensation and was denied. So he planned to get a new job. Now here's the revenge. Bob had access to the entirety of the ERP program. When a user signed in, the time was logged, and even if they didn't sign out, after 15 minutes it would log them out anyway. Everyone in the company was on salary, and many of them came in early and stayed late. Ontario labor law states that even salaried workers are entitled to overtime after 44 hours a week, unless they were managers or supervisors. So Bob jumped into the program and ran a report for each employee that wasn't a manager, all the way back to when the ERP program was started. Then he reached out to an employment lawyer and got the okay to refer employees to him. Bob lined up another job, and after he left, every employee in the company got an email with an Excel sheet showing the hours they had put in past 44 hours a week. The subject line said you're legally entitled to overtime pay, and the body of the email was the lawyer's name. The crap hit the fan. Almost every employee authorized the lawyer to negotiate with the company on their behalf, and the company had to pay a ton of money. All the company had to do was pay Bob for the extra work he put in. Instead, they had to pay almost everyone.